Take her away! A full truckload of cement for one useless girl. At least she made me a fortune.
Come here, girl.
He trusted you. You deceived him, wicked woman.
You sold me for some truckload of cement. After everything my father have done for you, he trusted you.
Too bad your so-called father is gone for good. Take her away.
Take her away!
When Chioma's father died, she thought the worst pain she would ever feel was losing him. She was wrong. The real nightmare began when the woman he trusted became her greatest enemy. Day after day, Chioma cried herself to sleep, praying for a miracle that never came. Then one afternoon, her stepmother did the unthinkable. She sold her for a truckload of cement. As Chioma stood there helpless and broken, believing her life was over, the sound of a black SUV echoed through the village, and karma finally came knocking. Pick it up from the dirt and eat it, you useless, lazy child. Agnes screamed at the top of her lungs, forcefully kicking the heavy metal bowl out of Chioma's shaking hands. The hot rice and beans scattered across the dirty ground, mixing instantly with the brown sand. Chioma fell to her knees, her heart pounding with terror as hot tears streamed down her dusty face. Please, Mama Agnes, I am so sorry. I was just so hungry. I have not eaten for 2 days, Chioma begged, joining her small hands together in prayer. Agnes simply laughed a wicked, cruel laugh that echoed through the small village compound. Did I give birth to you? You think you can steal the food I bought with my hard-earned money? If you want to eat, you will eat from the dirt like the animal you are. Agnes shouted, holding a thick wooden cane high in the air. The neighbors peeked over the low cement fence, whispering among themselves, but not a single person dared to step inside to help the poor girl. Chioma stared at the ruined food, her stomach twisting in sharp, painful knots. She slowly reached out her trembling fingers, picking up a few sandy grains of rice and putting them into her mouth just to stop the painful hunger. The sound crunched in her teeth, making her cry even harder as she remembered how beautiful her life used to be before everything changed. You are too slow. Pack all this dirt into a bowl and wash the floor right now, or you will sleep outside with the goats tonight. Agnes commanded, hitting the cane hard against an empty bucket to make Chioma jump in fear. Chioma rushed to use her bare hands to sweep the messy food, ignoring the sharp stones cutting her soft palms. She felt a deep, heavy sadness in her chest, wondering why her stepmother hated her so much and why nobody in the whole village cared about her suffering. Every day felt like a dark nightmare that never ended, and she wondered if she would even survive another week in this house of torture. After scrubbing the floor until her fingers bled, Chioma dragged her tired body to the back of the house, hiding behind the broken water tank. She looked down at her torn, oversized dress that used to belong to a much older woman, wiping her tears with the dirty fabric. She tightly hugged her knees, rocking back and forth as she asked the empty air why her life had become a story of pain and misery. She remembered a time when she was treated like a beautiful princess, when the house was filled with loud laughter, sweet songs, and the smell of fresh bread. Now, she was treated worse than a stray dog, forced to walk from the moment she woke up until the middle of the night without rest. She closed her eyes and prayed for a miracle, praying for someone, anyone, to come and rescue her from the wicked hands of her stepmother. Suddenly, the heavy iron gate at the front of the compound squeaked open, making Chioma freeze in absolute fear. She carefully peeked around the water tank and saw Agnes walking into the yard with a very strange, wealthy-looking man holding a leather bag. The man was Chief Ozo, a rich building contractor known for his bad temper, and he was pointing a fat finger directly at the corner where Chioma was hiding. Is that the girl you were talking about over the phone? Chief Ozo asked in a loud, gruff voice, adjusting his expensive gold necklace. Agnes smiled a greedy, terrifying smile, nodding her head and rubbing her hands together like a hungry lion looking at meat. Yes, Chief, she is young, she is strong, and she is entirely yours, just as we agreed, Agnes whispered loudly, pulling out a piece of paper. Chioma held her breath in shock, her heart freezing in her chest. What did Agnes mean by those words, and what evil plan were they plotting in the dark? Before we begin this emotional story, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. We bring you powerful stories of karma, life lessons, and inspiring endings. Trust me, after hearing what happened to Chioma, you'll be glad you stayed until the very end. Long before the tears and the hunger, Chioma's world was a bright and beautiful place because of her loving father, Papa Chioma. Papa Chioma was a successful farmer who treated his only daughter like she was the most precious gold in the entire world. My beautiful princess, one day you will go to the best university and become a great doctor. Papa would cheer, lifting a young Chioma high into the air as she giggled with pure joy. He always bought her the prettiest dresses from the city, showering her with toys, sweet chocolates, and endless bedtime stories. Back then, Agnes acted like an absolute angel, always smiling brightly when Papa was looking and calling Chioma her sweet little baby. "Oh, my husband, you spoil our daughter too much, but I love her just as much as you do," Agnes would say smoothly, kissing Papa's cheek. Papa truly believed he had built a perfect, happy family, completely blind to the wicked darkness hiding behind his wife's fake smiles. However, the very moment Papa Chioma turned his back to go to the farm, the sweet smile on Agnes's face would completely disappear. "Stop making noise, you stupid girl, before I slap your teeth out," Agnes would whisper harshly, violently pinching Chioma's arm until it turned black and blue. If Chioma ever tried to cry or complain to her father, Agnes would pinch her even harder under the dinner table, smiling warmly at Papa while hurting the poor girl. "Chioma is just tired, my love, she played too hard today," Agnes would lie smoothly, pouring Papa more soup while kicking Chioma under the chair. Chioma was too small and too terrified to tell her father the truth, fearing that Agnes would do something terrible if she ever spoke up. Papa just smiled, thanking God for giving him such a caring wife to help raise his daughter after his first wife passed away. The house was built on a terrible, silent lie, and Chioma carried the heavy secret in her young heart every single day. One evening, Papa Chioma called his daughter into his bedroom, looking very serious as he locked the wooden door behind them. He pulled out a heavy metal box from under his bed, a box that Chioma had never seen before, and gently placed his large hands on it. "Chioma, my smart girl, listen to me very carefully. If anything ever happens to me, you must know that your future is safe inside this floor," he whispered, pointing to the ground. "Do not trust anyone, not even your stepmother, with the secret of this room, because the world is full of greedy people." Chioma did not understand why her father was talking so seriously about leaving, but she nodded her head, promising to remember his exact words. Papa hugged her tightly, holding her as if he knew a massive storm was coming to destroy their peaceful lives. He put the box away, but the look of deep worry in his eyes remained locked in Chioma's memory forever. The very next morning, the happy life Chioma knew was suddenly destroyed forever over a simple, steaming cup of breakfast tea. Agnes brought Papa his morning tea, smiling her usual fake smile as she watched him take a long, deep drink from the mug. Suddenly, Papa Chioma dropped the cup, shattering it into pieces as he clutched his chest in terrible, unbearable agony. "My chest! Agnes, help me, it burns," he screamed, falling hard to the floor while Agnes just stood there, watching him with cold, emotionless eyes. Chioma ran into the room screaming, throwing herself onto her dying father and begging him to open his eyes and look at her. Papa grabbed Chioma's small hand with his last bit of strength, trying desperately to speak. The floor. Chioma, the secret." He choked out, his voice fading away before he could finish his final sentence. His eyes rolled back, his hand went completely limp, and Chioma was left screaming in the arms of the monster who was now in total control of her life. What was the rest of the secret he was trying to tell her? The dirt from Papa Chioma's grave was not even dry before Agnes showed her true, terrifying colors to the entire village. The very night they buried him, Agnes grabbed Chioma by the hair and violently dragged her out of her comfortable, warm bedroom. "You think you are a princess? Your foolish father is dead, and this house belongs to me now," Agnes screamed, throwing Chioma's clothes into the dark hallway. "From today onward, you will sleep in the dirty storage room with the rats, and you will work for every single grain of rice you eat." Chioma cried loudly, banging on her own bedroom door, begging her stepmother to stop this cruel joke, but the door was locked tight. She spent her first night as an orphan shivering on a cold, hard cement floor, listening to the rats scratching in the dark. She cried until her throat was completely dry, calling out for her dead father to come back and save her from this nightmare. By the next morning, Chioma's life as a slave officially began, and the torture was worse than anything she could have ever imagined. Before the sun even came up, Agnes kicked her awake, forcing her to carry heavy plastic buckets to the village stream 3 miles away. "If you do not fill that water drum before I wake up, I will peel your skin with a hot knife," Agnes threatened, holding a sharp kitchen blade. Chioma struggled under the heavy weight of the water, her small legs shaking and her bare feet bleeding from stepping on sharp thorns. While Chioma worked under the burning sun, cutting heavy firewood and washing huge piles of clothes, Agnes sat comfortably in the shade, drinking cold juice. Agnes sold all of Papa Chioma's beautiful farm equipment, using the money to buy expensive new dresses and flashy gold jewelry for herself. The rich, happy daughter of the great farmer had been erased, replaced by a starving, exhausted servant wearing rags. To make matters even worse, Agnes invited her lazy, cruel brother and his 2 wicked daughters to move into the large house. "Welcome to your new home. Do not worry about cleaning, we have a little slave to do all the dirty work for us," Agnes laughed loudly as they arrived. Chioma was now forced to cook massive pots of food, wash everyone's dirty underwear, and clean the entire compound single-handedly. If the soup was too salty, Agnes's brother would slap Chioma hard across the face, sending her crashing to the ground. If Chioma was too tired to wash the floors fast enough, the 2 wicked cousins would pour dirty water on her head and laugh at her misery. She was not allowed to eat with them. Instead, she survived on the leftover scraps they threw to the dogs in the backyard. Every day was a cycle of extreme pain, loud insults, and terrible hunger, breaking Chioma's spirit piece by shattered piece. One terrible afternoon, Chioma accidentally dropped a cheap glass cup while washing plates, breaking it into a dozen small pieces on the kitchen floor. Agnes rushed into the kitchen with eyes burning like fire, holding a thick electrical wire in her right hand. "You destructive demon! You are eating my food and destroying my property," Agnes roared, whipping the thick wire across Chioma's back without any mercy. Chioma screamed in horrible pain, falling into the soapy water and begging for forgiveness, but the beating did not stop for a long time. When Agnes was finally tired, she stood over the crying girl, breathing heavily and smiling a very dark, dangerous smile. "You are costing me too much money, but do not worry. I have a huge debt to pay, and I finally found the perfect use for a useless girl like you," Agnes whispered coldly. Chioma rubbed her bleeding back, terrified by the pure evil in her stepmother's voice. What kind of dark plan was Agnes putting together to get rid of her? Despite the horrible beatings and constant hunger, Chioma's heart remained as pure and kind as it was when her father was alive. Early one Saturday morning, Agnes loaded a massive basket of heavy yams onto Chioma's head and commanded her to go to the central market. "Do not come back to this house until you sell every single yam and bring me all the money, or I will kill you myself," Agnes threatened. Chioma walked for miles, her neck aching from the terrible weight, but she finally reached the busy, noisy market and sat in the hot sun to sell. By the middle of the afternoon, she had managed to sell all the yams, tying the cash tightly inside a small piece of cloth hidden in her dress. She was feeling proud and relieved, knowing she would at least avoid a beating tonight, when she suddenly heard a loud, angry commotion. A large crowd of angry villagers was shouting, throwing rocks, and chasing a young man covered in dust and mud through the market square. "Thief! Catch him! Beat him!" the angry market women shouted, throwing rotten tomatoes and hard stones at the young man as he fell into the dirt. The young man rolled on the ground, covering his bleeding head with his hands, crying loudly and begging for them to stop. "Please, I am not a thief. I was attacked by armed robbers on the highway, they took my car and my money. I just need water," he cried. The crowd did not believe him at all. They continued to kick him and insult him, treating him like the worst criminal in the world. Chioma pushed through the large crowd, her heart breaking into a million pieces as she saw the young man spitting out blood. She knew exactly what it felt like to be completely helpless, to be beaten and hated by people while nobody lifted a finger to help. Without thinking about her own safety, Chioma rushed forward and stood directly in front of the bleeding young man, spreading her arms wide to block the angry villagers. "Stop it! Leave him alone, please. Can you not see he is telling the truth and needs help?" Chioma screamed at the angry mob with all her might. The villagers stopped throwing stones, shocked that a little, ragged orphan girl was bold enough to stand up to them. Chioma quickly helped the young man sit up, using her torn dress to wipe the thick, red blood from his injured forehead. She ran to a nearby food cellar, pulling out the small cloth containing all the money she had made from selling Agnes's yams. "Auntie, please give me your biggest plate of hot rice, meat, and cold water." "Take all this money," Chioma said, handing over every single naira. She brought the mountain of food to the starving young man, who grabbed it and began eating as if he had not seen food in a month. Chioma smiled warmly, even though a terrifying voice in her head reminded her that giving away Agnes's money meant she was going to face absolute hell. The young man finished the food, drinking the cold water with tears streaming down his bruised and dirty face. "Why did you do this for me? You look like you need this money more than I do." "What is your name, little angel?" he asked, his voice shaking with deep emotion. "My name is Chioma. My father taught me to always help people in pain, no matter what," she replied softly, giving him a gentle, brave smile. The young man looked deep into her eyes, promising that he would never, ever forget her face or the incredible kindness she showed him today. He slowly stood up and limped away down the dusty road, leaving Chioma alone in the center of the quiet market. Suddenly, the reality of what she had just done hit her chest like a heavy stone. She had given away her wicked stepmother's young money. She walked back home slowly, her entire body shaking with pure fear, completely unaware that Agnes was already waiting at the front gate with a thick cane and a wicked smile. How was she going to survive the punishment that was waiting for her? The beating Chioma received that evening was the most terrifying and painful experience she had ever faced in her entire, miserable life. When she confessed that she used the young money to buy food for a starving stranger, Agnes completely lost her mind with rage. "You stole my money to feed a useless madman. I will show you madness today," Agnes screamed, locking the main gate so nobody could enter. She whipped Chioma with the thick cane until the stick actually broke into two pieces, leaving Chioma crying helplessly in the dirt. Agnes then grabbed Chioma by the back of her neck and violently threw her inside the dark, smelly shed where they kept the goats. "You will stay in this darkness with no food and no water for 2 whole days. Let us see if your kind heart can save you now," Agnes yelled, locking the heavy iron padlock from the outside. Chioma curled into a small ball on the dirty floor, crying in extreme pain as the goats nervously stepped around her in the pitch-black room. For an entire day and night, Chioma survived by drinking tiny drops of dirty water leaking from the broken roof of the shed. Her stomach growled loudly, and her whole body ached from the beating, but she stayed perfectly quiet, too afraid to make a single sound. On the second night, she heard heavy footsteps approaching the shed, followed by the loud, familiar voice of Chief Ozo, the wealthy building contractor. Chioma quietly crawled to the thin wooden wall, pressing her ear against the small crack to listen to the secret conversation happening outside in the dark. "Are you absolutely sure nobody will ask questions about her disappearance?" Chief Ozo asked, his deep voice sounding very serious and wicked. "Trust me, Chief. The whole village knows she ran away before, they would just think she ran away again," Agnes laughed smoothly, sounding incredibly evil. Chioma stopped breathing, her eyes wide with total horror as she realized they were talking about her. "Good. The new house you want to build will cost a lot of money, Agnes. I am giving you a very expensive gift," Chief Ozo grumbled loudly. Agnes giggled greedily, clapping her hands together in excitement right outside the thin wooden wall where Chioma was hiding. "Yes, Chief. 1 full truckload of premium cement, 50 shiny new roofing sheets, and 500,000 naira in pure cash. That is the price," Agnes declared proudly. "In exchange, you will take this stupid girl far away to the city to be your third wife. You can do whatever you want with her, she is your property now." Chioma's heart completely shattered into dust as the horrible reality finally made sense in her mind. Her wicked stepmother was not just punishing her, she was literally selling her human life to an old, wicked man just to build a fancy new house. She was being traded for bags of cement and pieces of metal like a cheap goat in the market. Tears of pure panic flooded Chioma's face as she listened to Chief Ozo agree to the terrible, disgusting arrangement. "The big truck full of cement will arrive at your gate tomorrow at exactly 12 o'clock noon, Chief Ozo confirmed, shaking Agnes's hand. "Make sure the girl is washed, tied up, and ready to go. If she makes a sound, the deal is completely cancelled." Agnes laughed loudly, promising that Chioma would be wrapped up tightly like a Christmas gift waiting for him. Inside the dark shed, Chioma accidentally bumped her foot against a metal bucket in her panic, making a loud, crashing noise that echoed in the quiet night. The laughter outside completely stopped, and heavy silence filled the terrifying air. "What was that noise?" Chief Ozo asked suspiciously, stepping closer to the wooden wall. Chioma froze, her hands covering her mouth, but she heard the heavy keys jiggling in the iron padlock. What would Agnes do to her if she found out she had the entire evil plan? If your heart breaks for Chioma and you believe nobody deserves to be treated this way, please subscribe to the channel right now and leave a comment saying, "Justice for Chioma." Your support helps us continue bringing you more powerful and emotional stories like this one. Agnes quickly laughed off the loud noise, lying to Chief Ozo with a completely calm and smooth voice. "Oh, do not worry yourself, Chief. It is just those stupid, restless goats kicking the empty buckets inside the shed," she said smoothly. Chief Ozo grunted in agreement, turning around and walking away into the dark night, promising to return with the truck tomorrow. Agnes did not open the shed door that night, but Chioma knew she had to escape before the sun came up, or she would be sold forever. When the first light of morning touched the sky, Chioma used the rusty nail she found on the floor to slowly pick the old wood around the lock. With all her remaining strength, she pushed the wooden door open, sneaking past Agnes's bedroom window like a quiet shadow. She ran through the village bush paths, her bare feet cutting on rocks, heading straight for the house of Elder Thomas, the most powerful leader in the village. When Chioma burst into Elder Thomas's compound, she threw herself onto the ground, holding his ankles and crying with a loud, desperate voice. "Please, Papa Thomas, you have to save me. Mama Agnes is trying to sell me to Chief Ozo today," she screamed, her voice shaking with absolute terror. Elder Thomas was drinking his morning palm wine with 2 other village elders, and they all stopped to look at the dirty, crying girl. "She is trading me for a truckload of cement, roofing sheets, and cash. Please, do not let them take me away," Chioma begged, tears washing the dirt off her face. Elder Thomas frowned deeply, putting his cup down and looking at Chioma as if she had completely lost her mind. Instead of helping her, he threw his head back and started laughing, a deep, mocking laugh that made Chioma's blood turn cold. The other elders joined in, pointing their fingers at her and shaking their heads in total disbelief. "You are a very wicked and ungrateful child, Chioma. How can you tell such a massive, terrible lie against the woman who feeds you?" Elder Thomas scolded angrily. "Agnes is a respected woman in this village. She came to me yesterday complaining that you steal her money and threatened to run away," he shouted. Chioma shook her head wildly, promising on her dead father's grave that every single word she was saying was the truth. "No. You do not understand. Chief Ozo is coming at noon today with the truck," she cried loudly, refusing to let go of his legs. Elder Thomas kicked his leg free, commanding the village guards to grab the screaming girl by her arms. "You are just a rebellious teenager who hates discipline. We will take you straight back to your mother to receive the punishment you truly deserve," the elder commanded. Chioma kicked and screamed, but the strong guards dragged her through the village, taking away her very last hope of rescue. The guards threw Chioma violently through the front gate of her compound, right into the waiting arms of her wicked stepmother. Agnes immediately started crying fake tears, throwing her hands in the air and thanking the elders for finding her crazy, runaway daughter. As soon as the elders left and the heavy gate was firmly locked, the fake tears on Agnes's face disappeared, replaced by a smile of pure, concentrated evil. "You thought you could expose me. You thought those foolish old men would believe a dirty rat over a wealthy woman." Agnes laughed, slapping Chioma across the face. She forcefully dragged Chioma into the main sitting room, bringing out a thick rope and tying the girl's hands and legs tightly to a heavy wooden chair. "Scream all you want now. The truck arrives in 2 hours, and there is absolutely no escape for you in this world," Agnes whispered directly into Chioma's ear. How could anyone possibly stop this terrible exchange? The hot afternoon sun baked the village as the clock slowly ticked toward 12 noon, the exact time Chioma's life was supposed to end. Chioma was tied so tightly to the heavy wooden chair that her wrists were turning purple, and a dirty piece of cloth was tied securely over her mouth to stop her from screaming. She sat in the middle of the large sitting room, tears silently streaming down her face as she looked up at a dusty photograph of her dead father hanging on the wall. "Papa, please, if you can hear me from heaven, please come and save your daughter," she prayed deeply in her mind, her chest hurting from the heavy sorrow. She felt completely abandoned by the entire world, betrayed by her family, ignored by her village, and sold for mere building materials. Agnes walked around the room wearing a bright, expensive new dress, dancing to loud music and drinking cold soda as she celebrated her upcoming riches. Suddenly, the heavy, Loud rumble of a massive vehicle shook the ground, making the windows of the old house rattle violently. Agnes squealed with absolute delight, running to the front door and throwing it open to look out into the sandy street. A gigantic, heavy-duty truck, completely loaded with hundreds of heavy bags of premium cement, was slowly backing up toward their front gate. Sitting right on top of the cement bags were shiny, brand-new metal roofing sheets that reflected the bright sun like pure silver. Agnes started clapping her hands and dancing a victory dance in the dirt, completely ignoring the curious neighbors who were peeking over the fence to see the massive delivery. The heavy truck hissed loudly as the air brakes locked, parking perfectly in front of the house to complete the evil trade. Chioma closed her eyes in the sitting room, her heart racing faster than a cheetah as she heard the heavy boots of the men walking toward the door. Chief Ozo marched into the sitting room looking incredibly proud, wearing a traditional chief's hat and carrying a thick, heavy brown envelope. He looked at Chioma tied up in the chair like she was just a new piece of furniture he had bought from the market. "The truck is parked outside, and here is your 500,000 naira in pure cash, just as we agreed," Chief Ozo barked, handing the fat envelope to Agnes. Agnes ripped the envelope open, pulling out the massive bundles of crisp, new cash and smelling the money with a greedy, wicked smile. "It is perfect, Chief Ozo. You are a man of your word. The useless girl is all yours, take her far away from my sight." Agnes laughed, stuffing the money into her large purse. Chief Ozo nodded, signaling his heavily muscled driver to come inside and untie the chair from the floor so they could carry her out. Chioma fought with all her strength, kicking her legs and trying to scream through the cloth, but she was far too weak to stop them. Chief Ozo grabbed Chioma firmly by the arm, roughly pulling her toward the front door while she cried in total, absolute despair. "Stop crying, you are my wife now, and you will learn to obey my commands," he shouted angrily, dragging her into the bright sunlight. Agnes stood on the porch, counting her cash and waving goodbye, feeling like the smartest and richest woman in the entire village. But just as Chief Ozo was about to push Chioma into the dirty cab of his cement truck, a sound louder than thunder shook the entire street. A massive, blaring car horn blasted through the air, forcing everyone, including Chief Ozo, to stop moving and cover their ears in shock. A cloud of thick brown dust rose at the end of the road, and the roar of a powerful engine grew louder and louder by the second. Who or what was coming down the village road with such terrifying speed and power? Through the thick cloud of brown dust, a massive, shiny black SUV drove aggressively down the narrow village road, moving like a dangerous beast. The huge vehicle suddenly swerved, parking sideways directly in front of Chief Ozo's cement truck, completely blocking the truck from moving an inch. The villagers who were watching from their fences gasped in absolute shock, running out of their compounds to see who owned such a magnificent, multi-million naira machine. Agnes dropped her purse in total confusion, staring at the black vehicle with wide eyes, wondering if the state governor had suddenly decided to visit their small village. Chief Ozo let go of Chioma's arm, marching angrily toward the black SUV and waving his hands in the air. "Hey! Are you completely blind? Move this car out of my way before I tell my boys to destroy it." Chief Ozo screamed loudly, trying to show off his power. Instead of moving, all four doors of the heavy black SUV swung open at the exact same time with a smooth, solid sound. Four huge men wearing dark black suits and dark sunglasses stepped out perfectly together, looking like highly trained military soldiers. They completely ignored Chief Ozo's angry shouting, walking aggressively toward the cement truck and standing in a straight, terrifying line. The village crowd went completely silent, sensing that something incredibly serious and dangerous was about to happen right before their very eyes. Then, the back door of the SUV slowly opened, and a perfectly polished black leather shoe stepped out onto the dusty ground. Agnes held her breath as a young, incredibly handsome man wearing an expensive, custom-made blue suit stepped entirely out of the vehicle. He stood tall, adjusting his silver watch, radiating an aura of total power and absolute authority that made even Chief Ozo step backwards in fear. Chioma rubbed her sore arms, squinting her tear-filled eyes as she looked closely at the handsome, rich man standing by the car. Her jaw dropped open in pure shock, and her heart skipped a massive beat as she recognized the deep, gentle eyes looking back at her. It was the exact same dusty, bleeding young man she had saved from the angry market mob just a few days ago. He was not a poor thief or a helpless beggar at all, he looked like a king who owned the entire world. The young man ignored the whispering crowd, ignored the angry Chief Ozo, and walked with determined, powerful steps directly toward the porch. He walked straight past Agnes, making her tremble in fear, and gently kneeled down in the dirt right in front of Chioma. He carefully pulled the dirty cloth from her mouth, looking at her bruises with a face full of deep, angry sadness. You gave me everything you had when I was completely covered in dirt, and now I have come to give you the world, he whispered softly, gently untying the thick ropes from her hands. Chioma cried heavy tears of relief, finally realizing that the miracle she prayed for had actually arrived in a black SUV. The young man stood up slowly, turning his back to Chioma and facing Agnes and Chief Ozo, who were now sweating nervously. His gentle face completely transformed into a mask of pure, burning anger, his eyes locked onto the wicked stepmother who caused so much pain. He pointed a firm finger directly at Agnes, speaking in a loud, commanding voice that echoed through the entire village. You thought you could sell a human life for bags of cement, but today, you will pay for every single tear she has dropped, he declared fiercely. What was the true identity of this powerful man, and how was he going to destroy Agnes's evil plan? The young man took a deep breath, facing the shocked crowd of villagers, the terrified Agnes, and the confused Chief Ozo. My name is Prince David. My father is the billionaire owner of the largest construction company in this country, he announced loudly, his voice echoing with authority. A few days ago, armed robbers truly attacked me, but when I begged this village for water, you beat me and called me a thief. Only this young, starving girl had the courage and the pure heart to save my life with her very last penny. The villagers bowed their heads in deep, heavy shame, finally realizing the terrible, cruel mistake they had made at the market. Prince David then turned his burning eyes toward Agnes, pointing at the massive truck loaded with heavy cement bags and shiny roofing sheets. I investigated everything about you, Agnes. I know you plotted to sell this innocent child to this wicked man for building materials, and your reign of evil ends today, he roared. Before Agnes could even open her mouth to form another lie, 3 heavily armed police trucks suddenly drove into the compound, sirens blaring loudly. Chief Emeka, the strict and powerful head of the state police, stepped out of the lead truck with a team of serious officers. Arrest them both for human trafficking, child abuse, and illegal trading. Chief Emeka commanded, pointing his stick at Agnes and Chief Ozo. The police officers rushed forward, forcefully grabbing Chief Ozo and putting heavy silver handcuffs on his wrist while he cried like a baby. Agnes fell flat on her stomach in the dirt, screaming loudly and grabbing the police officer's boots, begging for mercy and promising to change her ways. Please. I am a respectable woman. The cement is mine, the money is mine, she is just a disobedient child. Agnes cried desperately. The officers simply dragged her away, throwing her roughly into the back of the police truck while the villagers clapped and cheered for justice. As the police confiscated the cement truck and the dirty money, Prince David gently held Chioma's hand and led her inside the old house. He walked straight into Papa Chioma's old bedroom, carrying a large hammer, and powerfully smashed a specific spot on the concrete floor. Underneath the broken cement, he pulled out a dusty, heavy metal box, the exact same box Papa Chioma had tried to tell her about before he died. Prince David opened the box, revealing a stack of official legal documents and bundles of old, preserved money hidden safely away from Agnes. Your father knew Agnes was wicked. He secretly changed his will, leaving this entire house, the large farms, and millions of naira exclusively to you, Prince David explained with a warm smile. Chioma broke down in happy tears, holding the documents to her chest, realizing her father had truly protected her all along. The secret was finally out, and the wealth that was stolen from her was finally returned to its rightful owner. A few days later, the dark, sad atmosphere of the old compound was completely transformed into a place of bright light and happiness. Agnes and her wicked relatives were locked away in a dark, cold prison cell, finally tasting the bitter suffering they had forced upon Chioma. Meanwhile, Chioma stood proudly on the beautiful porch of her freshly painted house, dressed in a stunning, expensive new dress that fit her perfectly. Prince David stood beside her as a loyal friend and protector, promising to help her manage her father's massive farms and pay for her university education. Chioma looked out at the village, no longer a starving servant, but a wealthy, respected, and deeply loved young woman with a brilliant future ahead. She smiled brightly at the sky, knowing that no matter how dark the night gets, true kindness will always attract the ultimate reward, and karma never misses its target. What a powerful lesson. Chioma's kindness changed her life, while Agnes's greed destroyed hers. If you enjoyed this story and want more emotional stories filled with karma, life lessons, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and remember, kindness is never wasted, and karma never forgets an address.